Kevin. Welcome to my cave. Today I'd like to talk about a device that I use all the time, the Schmitt Trigger. It tidies up analog input signals to give a clean digital output. Think of it as a 1-bit A to D converter. What good is an A to D converter that only does 1 bit? Well, here in the cave I can think of two that unexpectedly start making noises when I'm trying to record a video. The thermostat suddenly decides that it's cold enough in the house that the furnace should fire up, and the float in the sump suddenly decides it's time for the sump pump to start. But there are examples all over the place. Let me generalize from these. I've got an analog signal, a voltage level. It represents a temperature, a level of water, a rate of flow, the brightness of a light, some quantity that I'm trying to adjust. I care whether the signal is above or below some set point. If I can convert the signal something close to voltage range of a logic gate, it's simply to use a logic gate to detect it. The input side of a CMOS logic gate is basically a circuit that compares an input voltage with some sort of reference that it generates internally. Often the reference is just the cutoff voltage gate of a MOSFET. So let me hook up a couple of CMOS inverters and try to make them into my detector. By the way, if you want more time to look at the schematic for everything I have on the breadboard here, there's a link down in the video description. Here I have the circuit set up on the breadboard. The variable input voltage is coming into the input of one inverter. The output of the first inverter is tied to the input of the second, and the output of the second inverter is going to my voltmeter. When I crank up the input voltage, the output voltage stays level at ground until the input hits 2.5 volts, and then it snaps up suddenly to the logic high voltage. Turning the input back down, the output voltage stays high until the 2.5 volt threshold is crossed again, and then it snaps right back down to ground. In case you'd rather see it on a graph, I've set up my function generator to put a triangle wave on the input and have the oscilloscope watch the input and the output. In the time domain, you can see the output staying low until the input crosses a threshold voltage and then suddenly snapping high. Later on, as the input is going back down, it'll suddenly cross the same threshold voltage and the output will snap back low. If I switch the scope's display over from a time series to an XY graph, you can see the transfer function of the gate. And it's essentially the step function that you might expect from the fact that as the voltage rises, it gets to a threshold and abruptly jumps up, and as it falls, it gets to a threshold and abruptly jumps down. So, I suppose we're done. We can bring the signal into logic range using a voltage divider or an op-amp, and use a logic gate to make the digital signal. I guess that's it. Thanks for watching. What? Your circuit is glitching all over the place? You say it's oscillating? Oh well, I've got more work to do. Let's see what happens when there's noise on the input signal. In the last episode, I built a noise generator on the breadboard. It's still there. Let me mix some of its output with a triangle wave and see what happens. Let me move a jumper and couple a little bit of that noise generator's output into the input signal. And things have got a little crazy. The scope's intermittently triggering on both edges. What's going on here? Let's zoom in on a transition and find out. That looks pretty weird. Let me just capture a single transition and zoom in further. Ooh, that's bouncing all around. What's going on here? What's going on here is that this noise signal is bouncing up and down above and below the threshold voltage. And as it does, because of the noise, the output of the circuit is trying to follow it. And there's a limit to how fast it can swing, but it's swinging up and down, and each of those false swings is triggering the oscilloscope. So when I let it run, it's a totally nuts display because it's triggering off all sorts of glitchy signals. If there's an input voltage that hovers near the transition, there doesn't need even to be a significant amount of noise on it. I'm not showing it here, but often the very act of switching the output pulls a pulse of current from the power supply. That pulse can show up as noise in the input, pulling it across the threshold, causing another output transition, another spike of current in the opposite direction, another transition across the threshold, and the circuit can start to oscillate. This isn't quite the behavior we want. Our circuit is just too nervous. It keeps changing its mind every time the tiniest thing happens at its input. I've got friends like that. We can give the circuit, and maybe the friends, more confidence if we give them some positive feedback. Circuits don't respond very well to hugs and encouragement, but this circuit is much improved if we feed some of its output back around to its input. What's going to happen now? When the circuit input is rising toward the threshold, the output is started out low, so the feedback pulls the gate's input a little lower than the circuit's input. The circuit input has to rise a little bit above the threshold to make the output switch. The input voltage can, of course, continue to rise past that point and the output will stay high. When the circuit input is falling again, the circuit output is high, and a little bit of that high voltage is fed around to the gate input. The gate input is above the circuit input. The circuit input has to fall a little bit below the threshold to switch the inverters back. And of course, the input can continue to drop without changing the output further. Once the circuit has made up its mind, it needs a big change to the input before it changes its mind. Engineers call this behavior hysteresis. That might sound a little bit like hysterical, but in fact is there to keep the circuit from going hysterical when the input value is close to the threshold. The circuit makes up its mind and sticks with its decision until there's a good reason to change it. I've set the circuit up on the breadboard so I can bring the two resistors in with the flick of a switch. I turn up the input voltage, and now it has to reach about 3 3/4 volts before the circuit switches. I turn the input voltage back down, and the circuit doesn't switch back until it's down to a little below 1.5 volts. The circuit's decision is sticky. It makes up its mind and needs to be convinced to change it. Looking at it graphically, you can see that the voltage response is exactly the loop that I drew on the computer. It stays low as the input voltage rises until it reaches the upper threshold, suddenly snaps high, and then as the input voltage falls again, it stays high until it reaches the lower threshold and suddenly snaps low. Coming back to the circuit on the breadboard, I can throw a switch to bring in that resistor pair and apply the feedback. And like magic, the signal stabilizes. If I zoom the oscilloscope in on the transitions, they're beautifully clean. In fact, I could move my jumper on the breadboard and apply 5 times the amount of noise, and the output still remains stable. So we appear to have tamed this circuit. Ordinarily, you won't want to build a Schmitt trigger out of logic gates and discrete resistors like this. If I show you the output of the first inverter, you may see why. The transition is really slow and sloppy, and that's because we're biasing the MOSFETs in the device into their active region. When the input is close to the gate's threshold, what's happening is that both the MOSFETs in the device are conducting. It's drawing an unnecessary amount of current from the power supply, and the output is swinging very slowly. This isn't really what we want for a logic output. It will work, and you can use it. And in fact, you can build a decent oscillator with it. But you generally don't want to do it. There are better ways. The manufacturers provide us with a better solution. There are CMOS Schmitt Trigger inverters with just the same pinout as the 4069. They go by part numbers like 40106, 4584, and 74HC14. They might not be drop-in replacements because the threshold and supply voltages are different, so check the data sheets. There are also versions where you have Schmitt-triggered NAND gates. The 4093 and 74HC132 are typical of the breed. The schematic symbols for these typically show a little hysteresis loop inside the part outline to distinguish them from ordinary logic gates. With these parts, you don't need to mess with external resistors. Just as with other CMOS gates, their input resistance is up in the gigohms. Future Kevin here. Because I'm such a caveman, I forgot to mention the newer devices in the 74AUP and 74LVC families. These families have 5 so-called universal gates, one per tiny 6-pad surface mount package. I'll try to cover these in a separate episode, because they have a connection to some nearly forgotten digital logic techniques. So let's take our circuit and pull out the 4069 and instead substitute in a 40106 and throw the switch to remove the feedback resistors from the circuit. Even with the feedback resistors out of the circuit, the output is staying stable, even with noise on the input. In fact, I can bring the noise level up to higher levels and still have it stay stable. Although with an unreasonably noisy signal, I start seeing a few glitches. If I go back to the XY display now, you'll see that the 40106 has a similar hysteresis loop to what I had before. But the so-called dead band, the range of voltages in which the circuit doesn't switch, is narrower. That's no surprise. I chose resistors to make a very wide deadband. One common use for these devices is to clean up the signal from mechanical switches. Here's a circuit that you might try to read out a push button. It's also on the breadboard. I'll switch the circuit back to the regular inverter. Most of the time the circuit switches cleanly when I push or release the button, but every so often it gives a glitch that looks something like this. The mechanical contacts in the button aren't closing cleanly, but bouncing a little bit before they close fully. We can fix this by adding a capacitor across the button. When the button closes, it will discharge the capacitor almost instantaneously, and the inverter will go high. If the button bounces while it's closing, the pull-up resistor doesn't have time to charge the capacitor up to the threshold voltage, and the high output stays high. When the button is released, the capacitor charges slowly through the pull-up until the voltage reaches the threshold again and the inverter output returns to low. The voltage won't reach the threshold until the bouncing when the button is released has already settled down. So there's a basic introduction to the Schmitt trigger. Next time, we'll look at building a Schmitt trigger into an oscillator and produce square and triangle waves. Well, triangle-ish anyway. And we'll see what the problems are. Then we'll be looking at how to build a more controllable Schmitt trigger and use it in a more predictable and controllable oscillator. Later on, we're also going to look at Schmitt triggers in the context of so-called gate and trigger circuits that will divide our electronic music into notes. So there's a lot more coming that will use this circuit. I hope you stay tuned for that. In the meantime, thanks for watching. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay curious.